Well, I know I'm late. That's just how it is. It's my party. I can cry if I want to. Hi, you guys. Welcome to Get Real with Rick Dancer. I apologize for being a little late. I've got guests in the wings, and we're trying to get all this stuff working. You know, when it's all this kind of technology and stuff. I don't have AI yet. So you're stuck with me, a real human being, and that's what it's going to be. Tonight we're going to talk politics. Oh, I love to talk politics. I hope Facebook doesn't care. Oh, maybe they will, maybe they won't. So we've got a couple of guests coming on. As you guys know, the Oregon, God, what's going on? A bunch of folks from our legislators on the Republican side walked out, and we're going to talk to one of those legislators, and at risk is their ability to run for office in the future, thanks to a really poorly written initiative that 70% of Oregonians voted for, because I don't think they really knew what it was. It was billed as, you know how stuff in Oregon this happens. You know, they write these faulty ballot titles that make it sound like it's something it's not. So it sounded like if you don't go to work, you shouldn't get paid. Nobody was talking about the fact that the more conservative folks in Oregon have absolutely no voice, because there used to be a supermajority. Now there's still a majority on the Democratic side. I have no problem with Democrats. I just think it should be fair. And when people shove things down your throat and are trying to push some legislation that doesn't side well with some on the Republican side or the more conservative side, then we need some equal opportunity. So you find ways that you can make things work. So we'll find out more about that in just a second. Our sponsors tonight, Chris Dental Family Dentistry, where everyone is welcome. Dr. Bratlin really does believe that. And he lives it. He gains business because of it, and he loses business because of it. Here's the deal, guys. If you're going to take a stand, you got to do it now. And it's going to cost you. I mean, it's going to cost you. I don't know if you guys saw my post online, but a guy who used to be a friend of mine, I mean, a pretty close friend of mine, actually redesigned my home when we wanted to remodel it. When the dark time was here and I spoke out against the darkness of COVID, this guy wrote me a nasty email, but I didn't know he was capable of even more nastiness. And he recently called up one of my clients and tried to get them to dump me because he said I was spreading misinformation. Who does that? What kind of evil is that when you try to ruin someone's living because they don't agree with you and you were friends? I could never hate anyone that much. I do not understand, nor do I ever want to hate that. But that's the cost of standing up and saying what you believe. I think more and more of us are going to be required to do that. Our other person who's a sponsor, New Leaf Hyperbarics and Wellness Center, Matt McCarl, stands up for what he believes in too. And that's what's kind of cool about my sponsors is most of a lot of people that were on the fence have been weeded out. You got to have balls to sponsor Rick Dancer, and we got a bunch of people with guts who sponsor us because they don't necessarily agree with me, but they believe with all their heart that we should all have a voice and be able to use it, and no one should be trampling on you. So we're going to hear more from them in a little bit. But first, our guest. Oh, you're here. There's Representative James, and it's Hebe, right, James?
Yes, sir. Hey, how are you doing this evening, Rick?
Hey, I am doing great. It's really nice to have you here. I guess I could just bring old Ben. You know, who invited Ben to the party? You know, James, here's the deal. You know, you're going to be outnumbered because you're the only guy, you're the young guy with brown hair, and the rest of us are a bunch of old gray-haired farts. And so you're the young guy. So Ben Edel, who I've been pronouncing his name wrong for the past year and a half, and Ben gets off the show and then laughs, and finally tonight tells me that, you know, Rick, actually, you've been pronouncing my name wrong the whole time. And I'm like, you know, that's what I don't like about you, Ben. So Ben, I would describe as a gadfly. No, he runs for office. He's a political wonk. And but the thing you all noticed tonight on the show is Ben has no opinions.
I keep it to myself.
Yeah, very quiet. So Representative, tell us kind of what's going. I saw today where 3 more folks on the Republican side are now under this 113, isn't it? They're now
Yeah. So
eligible.
we
Go
do
ahead.
have quite a few senators that are going to be 113 ineligible or whatnot, and there was one of Kate Brown lawyers recently put out an opinion that it will hold up in Oregon Supreme Court, but that's her opinion at this point. But what it really comes down to is, okay, so on one page they want to say, oh yeah, these senators can't run because they're not following the Constitution, but immediately to the right of that has the amendment where it's Article 4, Section 20 and 21, where they say each bill can only address one subject, and each bill has to be readable to the common person. I'm paraphrasing here, but it's these articles are there for transparency, and we're pushing for transparency because if the common person really knew what's in these bills, there's no way they'd pass. And that's why they're trying to, the terms log rollers and riders, where they log roll a bunch of popular policy into a bill and hide a rider, the bad bill, in there. And that's how they do it. They're not open about it.
So, and wasn't this just, and Ben or either one of you can pop in on this, but this was just a Democrat plan to keep Republicans, they know that they have a majority, and you guys, so if there's anything that you really believe in deeply, walking out is really your only voice. They have all the power. So that's why they went to the electorate and said, hey, let's change this law and make it sound like, well, why should James be getting paid to not do his job? Of course you should be doing your job. Well, in your opinion, and many others, by walking out, you are doing your job.
Absolutely. I took an oath.
Tell people why you walked out, and you finish your sentence, but also explain to people why these Republicans walked out. What was the bill?
Yeah, well, what started it was House Bill 2002. For me, that bill, it says that it's, for abortion rights or women's rights. But what they don't tell you is inside of it, it allows kids 15 years old to be castrated, like literally castrated, not chemical castrated, not put on a prescription, but castrated, becoming a eunuch, if that's how they feel, like with their gender dysphoria.
Parental knowledge.
With no parental knowledge. They also, in one of the versions of the bill, they wanted to decriminalize the hiding of an infant's corpse. Like this is really in the legislature. It's so far out there that's why we're calling for transparency, because if people knew what was actually in this bill, they would not be supporting it.
So you walked out to stop this from getting voted in, which it would, and the governor would sign it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm over in the House side of the building, but I walked out the day they were going to hear that because I refused to be a part of a non-constitutional process. I went in there, put that on the record, and then I left and wouldn't do the final vote. As I guess that first shot across the bow, because this is lunacy. I took an oath. I'm also a Marine Corps combat veteran, and I went and I fought overseas in Fallujah, and I come home and I take an oath to continue to uphold the Constitution, and they want to openly refuse to follow 2 paragraphs, right next to the one that they want us to follow. I don't have have it in front of me, but it's absurd. They're literally on the same page.
So James, first, one thing real quick, thank you for your service to our country and also to the legislature. We appreciate that. Ben, your concerns, didn't this bill, I've read so many, I don't know. And I'm just going to do a little rub in just for fun.
Sure.
I live in Montana, and our governor just signed a piece of legislation that does the exact opposite of the one in Oregon. Ours says that no child under 18 can get this I'm not going to call it gender affirming healthcare. That's just what the hell is that? But they can't do that without their parents' permission, and no kid can go in there and do that. What I find interesting about, and as soon as we start talking about that, all of a sudden we're considered anti-trans. I am not anti-trans. I have no opinion on trans. I don't care. But the thing that I find interesting is we will allow in Oregon, I think that's still the law there, a child can't get a tattoo without a parent's permission until they're over 18. But now you can go in and have your penis cut off or your breast cut off. If this bill were to pass, you could do that. I don't understand why people don't see the difference. That's lunacy. I mean, that's insane.
Well,
and
lunacy,
all the reasons. Go ahead.
Yeah, lunacy is the definition of the Democrat Party of Oregon's agenda. So you have to understand a couple of things. I think it's really important that your listeners, watchers, viewers understand the context and what's really, really going on here. So Measure 113 was a measure that went to the ballot that Oregonians voted on, that literally the summary in the ballot said that when legislators don't go to work, they should not be paid as legislators. Right. It was a complete deception from the core. They had millions of dollars spent on TV ads convincing Oregonians that these lazy bums in Salem weren't doing their job. They're out golfing, they were out fishing, but they weren't coming to session to vote on bills. Now, you have to understand another piece of this. The Democrat Party of Oregon has all three branches of government. They have complete control of all three branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branches. And when they have all three branches of government, so there's no checks and balances in Oregon, they hoodwink the voters into thinking that forming a quorum is not a democratic process. So the reason all 50 states up until now, with Oregon is the only state in the country that does not require a quorum now, because that's what this bill is. It's a bill, if it were written honestly, would say that in Oregon, the state legislature is not required a quorum after 10 days. That's what the bill is. Right.
So that was the goal. So they you're right up to that part. We still will need a quorum to convene.
Right.
And so that's what
technically, yes, but that's the point. The point of the bill is to attack the quorum. Okay. That's the intent. That's the motive of the measure, right? So there's still no quorum. So now that they've all lost their 10 days, every single one of them are at 10 days now in the Senate. So now they're not eligible to be reelected, to run for reelection in 2024 and in 2026, because half the senators run every 2 years in Oregon. Okay. Right. So now they can lock up every session between now and then. And that's why Rob Wagner, the guy I ran against.
Okay, wait. I want you to talk about that slowly. So, because I understand that because I've been listening to you and talking to you. But I want you to get that to my viewers so that they really understand that. So what they've done, explain this.
What they've done is they've fallen on their swords on behalf of every Oregonian. They've said, no, Rob Wagner, we're going to call your bluff. Rob Wagner is the Senate president of Oregon. And they said, we're going to call your bluff. We're going to go as long as we have to stop House Bill 2002 and also Senate Bill 348, which is a gun ban. Okay, it's a total gun ban. Yeah. And so they're stopping these bills. But listen, these bills are illegally written because they're deceiving the voters. When they write Measure 113, it was a complete deception. It was illegal. You're not allowed to do that by Article 4 of the Oregon State Constitution. Now, Article 4 describes the methodology by which the legislature operates. It's the legislative law in the Constitution of Oregon. And so what happened was that these senators, these brave senators, stood up and confronted the Democrat Party of Oregon and said, we're going to get our 10 days. We're all going to sacrifice our ability to run for re-election, but we're not, and we're going to be able to lock up every session between now and 2024 and as long as into 2026. So the Democrats won't be able to pass a single nonpartisan bill. Everything will be bipartisan. I think before you say anything, I want you to understand that the purpose of a quorum is to force the legislators to pass bills in a bipartisan manner by everyone showing up. Even if they vote against something, they've showed up and they've done it bipartisanly. Now, when you walk out, that's when it's partisan. That's when it's a fight. But it's going to force the Democrats or the majority power to work with the other side, which ultimately is in fact democratic process. And the Democrat Party of Oregon, their public relations campaign is to say that Republicans are actually stopping democratic process. That's a gaslight. It's a lie.
Oh, yeah.
They're participating and creating democratic process, and the Democrats are trying to eliminate democratic process with Measure 113.
And 113 kind of came back and nipped him in the butt, didn't it?
It sure did. Because you know why? Because these Democrats like Rob Wagner, these guys are creatures, man. They're reptilian. And what they think that everybody thinks like them. They think that the Republicans in the Senate care more about their political careers in Oregon than they do about Oregonians. And they thought wrong. They made a bad error in judgment because the Republicans care about the people more than their own jobs. And that's what they're demonstrating right now.
Yeah,
James, go.
You're exactly right there, Ben. It's that's how, like, you know, I worked really hard to get into this position, but if it takes, you know, falling on the sword, you know, to truly represent my constituency, I'm going to do that. And that's what the senators have chosen to do. It's what we look at. You talk about, they have the blue trifecta, the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, the governor's office. And what we're seeing right now is called the tyranny of the majority, because they are forcing their will upon us. And it's still supposed to be a bipartisan effort, but it's not right now. And it's acting like we're puppetry. They'll point to us in the room and say, hey, it's bipartisan. Look, there's Republicans here, but we don't get a say.
Okay,
and
hold that thought for just a second. Let me run a couple of ads. I'm going to leave you guys on here, but hold on just a second. Okay, our sponsors here.
Did you know that light therapy could alleviate your pain? There's been over 60 years of study into light therapy. Blue light really works well with the skin. Red light penetrates down into the muscles to really help with muscle recovery from workouts. Infrared can go bone deep through the skull into the brain and can help promote blood flow, which can help with mental clarity. Some new light pads, they're called the Deep Light Therapy Pad. They're infrared only. They're really good for targeting areas of the body to really get deep penetration into large muscles, down to the bones, work with muscle soreness and joint pain alleviation.
Still get patients once in a while. I had a patient the other day that came in and said that they weren't being able to be seen at their office that they were currently at because they didn't get a vaccination. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, and so a lot of my patients actually come to us because I back the blue. I believe in freedom of speech and freedom to decide if you want to put something in your body or not. So we have like 90% of my patients, and like I accept everybody. I don't care if you have purple hair. I don't care if I don't care if you're transgender. I don't care. Like, I'm accepting of everybody. I don't care. I don't really care, as long as to me, it's more important if they're just a good individual.
Gosh, how nice would it be to get back to that, where it doesn't matter honestly doesn't matter what color your skin is, what your sexuality is, whether you dress up like a man or a woman, that you're just a good person. And, that's what's so sad to me now as a Montanan, looking back at Oregon. Oregon has a lot of great people, and they just need to stand up and start talking about that and what and get involved, because look what's happening right now with your Secretary of State, your governor. Rob Wagner is also getting money from these people. There's so much corruption going on there. And it's like, that's why you're supposed to have two parties or more. So you got balance in the government. When you don't have balance, this is what you get.
It's exactly what you get. Oregon is run by a criminal enterprise. Okay. That's who really is in charge of our state. And with Shemia Fagan's resignation, if you want to talk about that, Shemia Fagan was being paid $30,000 for every license that she procured on behalf of the state of Oregon for a big marijuana dealer that was that we know has been selling on the black market and buying and procuring and retailing black market and retail market, not paying their taxes. They owe millions of dollars in state taxes, and they've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash to Tina Kotek, Rob Wagner, the guy that I ran against last election, and Shemia Fagan. And Shemia Fagan resigned so fast. It was like 3 days, 72 hours. She's done. And she's done because there could very well become criminal investigations on all three of them if our law enforcement agencies and federal law enforcement agencies involved are actually legit. This is very scary stuff.
But you know, that's the whole thing is, I think most people, like I even admit it's like what's going on nationally too. I don't feel like anything's really ever going to be done. And I think that's what, go ahead, James, you want to say something?
Yeah, no, it is. You bring up the national side of things with the Mueller investigation that just came out, 300 pages they released showing that, yeah, it was the DNC that was collaborating with Russia. It was absolutely them, and the FBI knew the whole time. And you know, for a while, you know, I guess I don't know, Epiphany, I was kind of like on the fence about the deep state or the FBI interfering in elections and foreign governments and all this. And it's, you know, it comes to the joke where what's the difference between a conspiracy and a fact? You know, about 6 months.
Concerning, or the latest news cycle. So what you know, at this point, so Young Republicans came on here and posted something that says senators can still file to run for other seats or can file to run for the following session. So it sounds like 113 was as poorly written as it was sold to the public, although
they can
successfully.
run the next session for the legislature, but they're barred from running for re-election for their current positions. But this is a big deal because when you're the incumbent, you have a tremendous advantage over a newcomer. And so what they're forcing people out of their seats. And we're the only state in the nation that allows a Senate president majority, to determine whether or not their opposition is eligible to run for their seat again. This is tyrannical. I mean, there's nothing,
because it's supposed to be about we the people decide this.
Yeah,
but I guess they would say you decide.
That's democracy.
But they would say we decided when we passed that legislation or to the change to the Constitution that allowed this to happen. That's what the other side would say about that.
They're saying you exercise the tools available to you by the Oregon State Constitution to represent your voters, and we will make sure that you are not eligible for your voters to elect you. That is not democracy.
Wow.
Absolutely. I think you know, while we wait on the Supreme Court's decision on that, though, you know, they are going to be, I know Merkley needs replaced. We got quite a few congressmen that they could be running for their seats. So, you know, I believe that this will, you know, they're not going to take this lying down. They're going to fight it. And I believe that if they can't run for that same seat, they're going to find something, you know, statewide, and they'll win it. Some of they're rock stars. They really know what they're talking about and what they're doing.
But what if you end up like you lose 16 senators? Is that what we're at right now?
Yeah, 13.
Yeah, 13. So what you lose those, you know, the chances then are really, because it's Oregon, are really good that you're going to fill that with at least half Democrats. And so then you get your super majority back. It is just like it gives me a headache because it's so unfair, and yet I mean this and Oregon really is just like a reflection of what's going on nationally. It's the same kind of thing.
It's a corrupt government. It's fully corrupt. our federal government and the Biden administration, we already know is totally paid off by China and God knows who else. And they're doing China's bidding. We can obviously see it. And now Oregon is in a similar state as well. So is California and Washington. They're doing the bidding of foreign agents. And I put a reel out the other day looking at our legislative framework that we've seen since 2020 when Rob Wagner became the Senate Majority Leader in 2020. Our legislation of decriminalizing drugs, no questions asked immigration policies, not even a judge can ask what the immigration status is of a defendant in their courtroom. Then you of course, decriminalizing hard drugs, and then defunding the police, and then disarming law-abiding citizens, and all the different things. Automatic driver's license for illegals. We have one of the biggest human trafficking states in the nation, if not number one. We allow these big marijuana grows that are illegal to operate in Southern Oregon, where they're bringing the cartels are bringing slave labor and sex trafficking.
Slavery.
Yeah.
We have slavery in Oregon.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
When you look at our legislative framework, it's designed to help nefarious criminal cartel operations. It's not designed to support taxpayers who own businesses, the homeless encampments, the rights to the public's egresses and ingresses, the sidewalks, the parks. They're there for people to be homeless and use drugs. This is crazy. This is not what the people voted for. This is not what they want.
Well, what's interesting is one of the things I hear a lot is here in Montana is people will say, so did Oregon really legalize like hard drugs? And I go, yeah. And then they say, is there really a proposal? And I don't think this ever made it anywhere, but that they're going to pay $1,000 to every person who's homeless and you don't have to prove that you're homeless. And I said, there was a measure that was looking at that. And I think I at some point, there's obviously people who support this. So
not really. It's hard to find anybody that supports it.
Well, and how come it always, well, that's how it feels. So
yeah,
why is a group of people, but here's the question. Why are people afraid to speak out?
There's a lot of reasons. Well, we can see over the last couple of years, anybody with a conservative mind or thinking winds up being lambasted, whether it be at their place of employment or Antifa showing up to their house, bullying them, threatening them. People are, and then just to be like made a pariah in their social circles,
But
there's a lot of ways people.
What if enough people? I mean, I've experienced it too, James. With my business and I've had people that, oh well, yeah, we really support you, and then as soon as they start getting harassed from people for supporting me, then they whimper away, and it's like, but if there's enough of us out here, and I'm not calling for an overhaul. I don't dislike Democrats. What I want is an equal opportunity anywhere I live to be able to have my voice heard and to not be canceled. And I'm sorry, I don't care if you call me a racist or a homophobe or a transphobe. I just don't care because I'm not. So if we started believing that we really that people, I think I was listening to a podcast and this guy was saying, you know what I say to these people? So I've started answering people. They'll come on my page. You're such a homophobe, and I went so. And I just left it, and I just leave it because it's like, you don't matter to me. This is just your thing. And if every Oregonian started going, what is best for Oregon? Not the Democrat Party or the Republican Party or the Independent Party, which by the way, Oregonians still don't know this. And I want to educate some of you that you know who is the largest voting bloc in Oregon? Non-affiliate voters. They're more than Democrats and more than Republicans. So you are the block, but you're also, no offense, but you're kind of lazy and you don't get out and vote because you don't care. If you guys, just the non-affiliated voters would stand up for whatever it is that you believe, you could change the state of Oregon and get rid of the homeless camps. You could get rid of the drugs. You could stop these legislators from ramrodding legislation down your throat. You could change it, just your block. The Republicans and Democrats can scratch each other's throats out. No offense, you guys. But that block of people, if you would stand up for what you think, quit whining and bitching about it and start doing something about it. It's maddening. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox just for a moment, because I actually do have a Rick Dancer soapbox, just so you know.
Are you standing on it right now?
No, it's at my house. It really does say Rick Dancer soapbox, and it's like I used to take it and then set it down, and I'd stand on it and do a video about something I was complaining about. It's kind of a fun thing. I should bring it back. James, go ahead. You got something to say?
Yeah, no. Anytime somebody has a concern, definitely reach out to your legislators, whether they're your own or somebody else's in the state, because we do pay attention. We do see the amount of people that email us with their concerns, and whenever one side is super loud and the other side doesn't put their piece in there, it can make it sound like that this fringe group is bigger than they really are.
Right.
So it's really the silent majority there. If, most, I guess conservatives, a lot of people are like, I just want to live my life. I don't care about the government. I want them to leave me alone. But it takes, the government going so far for a lot of people to get involved that it's that point when they start talking about, like, my son could go and get himself castrated at 15. Yeah, no,
we're in an emergency situation here.
Yeah. That's a unforgivable sin in my eyes if a doctor were to do that. And I'm a, combat Marine, and you can read between the lines there. But it's I know there's a lot of people that would come unhinged and it's go Old Testament on them, so to speak. But it's a scary situation.
What's scary about House Bill 2002, there's a few other things and details that people don't understand. I had dinner with my dad, who's a very smart guy. They're Democrats. I was raised by Democrats. Most people in my family are liberal. And I think I'm liberal, to be honest with you. Just, God, come across as conservative these days. But I'll tell you this.
In Oregon, you could, it doesn't take much to, I know people come on and they go, God, what happened to you? And I said, I moved to a state where people think.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I'll tell you, people don't understand House Bill 2002. House Bill 2002 states that any child can have an abortion without parental knowledge. And what this means is it supports sex traffickers, and it will be exploited by sex traffickers that drag 10-year-olds in and 11-year-olds in and 12-year-olds in to get their pregnancies aborted without parental knowledge or even a request for a parent. It denies the doctors that do that the ability to report to DHS or Human Services or Child Services, I mean. It also indemnifies the doctors that provide these abortions and the gender-affirming care, i.e. sex changes on minors without parental knowledge or consent, from being sued. So this is like I'm not Christian. I'm very spiritual. I believe in God. God and I have our own relationship. But this is demonic to me. This is like what is this? This is so evil at its core.
Well, go ahead.
I agree with a lot of what you said, Ben, and I think I should elaborate. Like I'm guess more libertarian than traditional Republican. We live in Oregon. It's kind of a purple state.
Yeah,
but it's it shouldn't be a partisan issue, and in like classical liberalism is different than what the term has become these days, because classical liberalism would have celebrated, the dialogue and free speech and, all these rights that are so sacred to us.
I use this a lot. When I moved to Eugene, 30 years ago, every shitty Volvo had bumper stickers on it. And they said, kill your television. Don't trust authority.
Yes,
don't trust the government and stuff like. Then there was a coexist one on there. Everyone but the coexist would now be a Republican bumper sticker, and the Democrats have become the Republicans. I mean, it's like it's gone to this complete opposite. And it's like, when do you get back to the place where, you know, and what I loved about Eugene when I first moved there is you could have, I was a Democrat when I moved there. I became a Republican, and then I just got rid of everything. But you could have these conversations, and now people, my old Democrat friends, come up to me and say, "You've changed," and I go, "No, Oregon changed, and it became less tolerant." The more we talk tolerance, which I hate tolerance anyway, because if I'm tolerating you, I mean, that means I'm putting up with you. I don't want somebody to tolerate me. I mean, that's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard, tolerance. But we're most intolerant. We're the most hateful. I mean, it's like, you know, the people that are screaming at me for hating are actually the more hateful. I don't scream back. I'm sitting here going, I don't hate you, but you're sitting here telling me, Rick Dancer, you're killing people, you know? And I think it's, people just have to get back to having conversations again and talking about things that matter to them. And I think it's not going to happen until the apathetic wake up, because I think there's enough of Republicans who are, you know, they're strong in what they believe. There's a lot of Democrats who are strong in what they believe. There's more Democrats, in my opinion, who just, they stick to message and they won't vary from it no matter what's the power that they have, is because even if it's wrong, it's right. You follow in and you win, because it's all about winning. And that's not what Oregon was ever about, because it's not about winning. It's about what's best for the people, all the people of Oregon. Yes, even Eastern Oregon, even Southern Oregon, not just the I-5 corridor.
Yeah. And the majority party has done really good with, you know, honing in on one message. They all stick to that message, but they don't vote their conscience. And what has happened is there is zero diversity of thought. Right. They talk about diversity, but they won't allow diversity of thought or debate to happen.
James, that is so interesting, because you just opened up a little can of worms there. So they preach diversity, but we're not. They talk about equity, but we're really not. We want equity and equal treatment as long as you agree with the message here. But if you're a Republican or a conservative, you don't get equal treatment. We just shut you up. But everything we talk about on the outside is just a bunch of BS, and the stuff on the inside really shows the true heart. Isn't that weird? It's like
it's all by design, right? So, like I was saying about my dad, who's one of the smartest people I know. But when we were talking about things yesterday at dinner, what he believed wasn't true. And so a lot of these debates aren't about like, oh, this is your position on this issue. What we have right now is we have a set of people who do not read the bills, who do not understand actually what's going on, who watch maybe local news, or they might read certain newspapers or whatever. And they're literally they believe lies that just isn't true. And so look at like the report that came out today about the Donald Trump on January 6th, right? What was that? Who was that? The guy? Did you guys remember that?
Be careful. Don't say too much, because this is one of those issues that the media gods don't like.
Well, that whole big report, right, that just came out today, completely
tells a different story.
The lies.
It tells a completely different story.
It's a complete charade. It's a cinema. Okay. And more, this is what I'm calling for. I'm calling for more people, more voters to learn how to use OLIS, the legislative information systems in their states, to learn how to read the measures, read the bills. And the reason why the Republicans are walking out about the 8th grade reading level, right? It has to be simple and understood. When you write a document or a contract as an attorney, you're creating a framework that creates a pathway for people to operate within. Now, that takes a high level of reading comprehension and cognitive ability to see those pathways, what's said and what's not said, okay? Those things matter. When you write these bills at a highly complex means like they're doing right now, people misunderstand the bills and they can't They do not know what they're voting for. They do not, even the legislators don't always know what they're voting for because they can't comprehend it. So it's very, very scary stuff. It's very important that bills are simple and plain. It's incredibly important.
Oregon is like number 38th in the graduation level. And you know what I mean? So you're dumbing down kids and people, and then you're creating more complicated. I'm sorry, people go, well, you're a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm just a realist. I'm looking at things and going, how can you not put one and one together and come up with two?
You're just observing. You just see it. There it is. Look.
And I think anytime, one of the warning things I would throw out to just general public people is if people start calling you names instead of addressing the issues, it's usually because they don't understand the issues, and they don't. All they're doing is repeating CNN or MSNBC counted talking points. So when you start getting called names, you're hitting a nerve, and it's okay. That's okay to hit a nerve. You know.
Yeah, and what you just talked about, Ben, about the 8th grade reading level. Well, that's not just that's what the media is saying. That's in the Constitution that the bills need to be written in plain language so that people can understand them. And the Supreme Court has upheld that. That's for transparency, so that people know what's being passed. Yeah, they don't want us to know.
So don't you think this is maybe you guys were talking spiritual and stuff, so it's my show, we can go there. Maybe in the big picture, what if for those who are God-fearing people, let's just say that God's standing up there going, this has gone on for 40, 50 years, slowly to this point. And people have, I used to always say when I was a news guy, the biggest thing I saw, the biggest problem in Oregon was apathy. People not getting involved. People, I'm busy, I'm working. Well, maybe it's to the point where you want your state back, you got to do something. And you're going to have to stand up, and you're going to have to say something, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to hurt, and people aren't going to like you. But once you do that, all of a sudden, if you guys are right, and I really do kind of think you are, I think there's a silent majority. And if people, what they don't want you to know, the people, the controllers of the message, whoever that might be, they don't want you to, they divide and conquer. That's what the dark time was all about, to divide us and conquer us. So what if we resist and say, I won't be divided, and I don't want to conquer anybody. I want to understand my neighbors. And you start speaking your truth, what you believe to be right, and see where it goes. I think that's what, maybe that's where not just Oregon, but that's the nation is saying, what do you believe? Do you believe that this is more important than your education, that teaching this woke doctrine is more important than learning how to manage a job and hold down employment and that kind of stuff? I think most people wouldn't, and they're too afraid to say it because you'll get, in trouble with people. So what happens? So what's the next step then for the Senate, for the Republicans in the Senate? I mean, most of them will end up past their deadline. That you think they're just going to stall this thing out to the end?
So, well, it all gets kind of nitty gritty and a lot of details, but I'm not 100% sure what all I'm supposed to talk about, but I do know that there's a deadline, a second chamber deadline coming up on Friday, which if the bills, the way I'm calculating it, if they don't get through the Senate by Friday, they would be dead and those bills would die. That's what I'm gathering myself. I don't get to sit in on the inside Senate caucus meeting. I'm on the House side of the building, but from what I know about the procedure and everything, I believe that to be the case.
Okay, so Friday's kind of a deadline. If it doesn't pass by then, it goes away now. But it will come. It will come back to haunt us again in some form. And then we have a whole new story. But when is the session over? June
25th at 11:59 p.m.
Oh, is that the deadline you're saying? The 25th?
Yeah, that's the constitutional deadline.
So is that when the bill would die? Or are you saying this Friday?
No, this Friday. Well, there's a deadline coming up. It's called the second chamber deadline. So if it's not scheduled for a committee hearing by the end of Friday, then it won't come to the floor for a vote this session.
So not to be stupid, but I'm just good at it. Is everything shut down? You got to brag about what you can.
Stop it.
If they don't have a quorum, if they don't have Republicans there, they can't do anything. They're not doing. So then officially then they're not working either. So if they're not working for 10 days and you guys are walked off, you know what I mean? There's a whole new can of worms. So if they're not able to legally work, then they're not working either. So I wonder if there's some kind of challenge could come to that. That's another little iron in the fire there, a little wrinkle in the.
We can
What's
add
good
to
for
the
the
kicker.
goose is good for the gander.
Yeah, we didn't show up, but you couldn't do anything. So you officially got paid to not work. It's something to think about. You guys are, I'm such a noble soul, and you guys are troublemakers. I bring people like you on my show, and I get in trouble.
Yeah, well, I got in a lot of trouble as a kid, but now, ironically, I'm finding that I'm able to, assert myself by using the rules. Like we have this thing called the Constitution that I was literally went to war and was willing to die for, had friends die for, and now I'm here, and it's like, hey guys, look right here. You guys all have a copy of this. Problem is none of them have read it. I literally have to go through and show all these legislators, like, look, like, got to read it. And
the current narrative is that it's an old document, and and it's outdated, and we need to do all this other
I've heard
stuff.
I've heard that. It's mind blowing. So you're telling me free speech has an expiration date?
Oh well,
you're telling me the right to protect yourself has an expiration date? How about slavery? Does that have an expiration date too? Anti-slavery, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment. Come on, the Fifth Amendment, due process. That's something that is old and outdated.
I never thought I'd live in a time when freedom would become the new F word, because even during the dark time of COVID, it was like, when you said, hey, I just want the freedom to be able to, and then it became like I was trying to hurt people, or my freedom was encroaching on other people's freedom. It's like, it's unbelievable what happened. And I think it's the weird, I was listening to a psychiatrist talk about this the other day, and they were saying, this has mentally really affected a lot of people, the way that it was handled, because now we can go back and we can't say too much on here, but we can look at a lot of facts. And even I heard an interview with the good doctor the other day, and he was talking about those and said, now we're like 10% effective.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, some of this stuff through the emergency over the last couple of years, it's the fact that they were lying to us that concerns me. We didn't know all the facts. We don't, and I can understand, how people would arrive at different opinions, but whenever they try to hide the facts from us, that they obviously knew, they're lying to the people. That's what is terrifying to me.
It is, and what's equally terrifying is how many people just wanted to get it over, so they just went along with it. I think that is not even in my playbook. That does not work in my playbook. So now we suffer the consequences, and hopefully people will never believe that again, that if things like that happen again, that they will sit there and say, but unfortunately we are creatures of habit, and we've seen this over and over again. I won't mention times that are thinking in my head, because then that will get me pulled again. I mean, and this is the weirdest thing. This is the weirdest thing too, James and Ben. I was in the media for 30 years, and I never was concerned about things I said. I mean, I was always being truthful, and making sure I was factually correct,
right.
But I never thought that I would get pulled. I have been pulled so many times from social media, and this is my business. So they have the power to do that just on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, LinkedIn, any of them. To censor what you're saying. And then there's people out there that think they're getting the truth from the media. Oh my God, pull your head out of the hole, because the only what they allow, and then they throttle, and then this show will air, and then I'll watch it. It'll go really good like this, and then they'll start throttling it back unless I pay to push it out, which with FB, I've said never again. I will not pay to push another thing out. I put all my clients over on other platforms and pay and push them out.
That's why their stock is down.
Yeah. Well, I just hope that another Elon Musk comes in and buys Instagram and Facebook and gets everybody back to this, or they should put them on and treat them like a publisher. If they want to act like a publisher, then let's treat them like a publisher, and they get to abide by the same rules the media does.
Well, what's super concerning, that's not that we were on foreign policy per se, but you bring up TikTok and a lot of the, we saw the Chinese National Police, I don't know, sorry if I bring that up and it gets you canceled, but the Chinese National Police and their secret police stations that are popping up here in America, and their secret police that are harassing people and coercing them and threatening their family in China. We see this spilling out onto the social media too, where the State Department recently declassified and released that the Chinese Communist Party has been intentionally crashing Republican platforms and overburdening Republican platforms over the last few years. And it was like, I watched the press release after they raided that Chinese National Police station in New York, and they sat there and talked, 8 minutes of the Chinese National Party was doing this and this and this and this. And it's comes back to that joke. What's conspiracy versus fact? Just a little bit of time. Yeah. And it's terrifying if we go down that rabbit hole.
Well, I you know how I am about rubbing things in, and I hate to do that with Ben here, especially to make him feel bad. But
I'm very sensitive.
But my state is also, Montana is one of the ones that has banned TikTok as well. So
awesome.
I moved to paradise. and I know after I do that, I get people from Oregon. They all go, "Oh, why do you hate Oregon?" I do not hate. I love Oregon. You know what I hate? I hate what's happened to it.
Yeah.
And I hate that so many people want to join Idaho because they're so sick of being in Oregon. And I hate that so many of my friends and people who are Democrats and Republicans feel voiceless and they have no voice. I do. I hate that. I hate that rules that make people feel good have become the way of Oregon, not rules that make sense. I hate that common sense is no longer common at all. It's like bleeding hearts have taken over. And that's not a compliment, because a bleeding heart needs a brain too. God gave us a brain and a heart so that your heart could feel and your brain could temper it. What you've got is a bunch of people running your state who have lost their brain, and all they're doing is using their heart. And whatever feels good, it feels like this would be good, and it feels like this would be the right thing to do. Well, there is right and wrong. And Oregon has lost track of that, doesn't understand it, doesn't see that. And not the whole state, but the people making the rules. And so that's why, to me, you continue to talk about this stuff so that people stand up again, and you are the silent majority. So change that. Don't be silent anymore. Hey guys, I got to call this a wrap, because if I go over an hour, then I have to sit down and cut it up to get it on Instagram. So time is more important than you.
It always will be.
James, it was really super nice meeting you. Thank you for serving Oregon, and
you as well.
And doing this, and I knew you were in the service when you first said, "Well, thank you, sir," because service people always say "sir," and I love that. I think it's really it's just a great. I love that about the service. It teaches people. We probably need more people in Oregon to go into the service. And Ben, always a pleasure, Mr. Edel.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Rick. It's an honor to be on your show.
Your hair looks a lot like Rick Dancer's. Did you know that?
It's not nearly as quality. You're at 12 and I'm like a 7.5.
Well, you got some years to catch up, and you can at 63 still be this.
I hope. I can only hope and pray.
All right. See you guys later.
James, good to see you.
All right, you guys. So there again, interesting topics. That was fun. I didn't know where we were going to go with that, and I think that was just super fun. So share this on your page. Let me give you some other stuff just because it's my show. Tomorrow night, we're going to do freestyle. So that's when you guys really like these shows. We do really well with numbers when we just talk about whatever's on our mind. So that's going to be tomorrow night at 5:00 Oregon time. But here's my advice to you. First of all, I do not hate Oregon. I love Oregon. I was born there. I am an Oregonian at heart. But you guys can change it. You're a silent majority. I'm not saying that every Democrat is wrong. I'm just saying the leadership leading you down this progressive trail is not right. And it doesn't reflect Oregon. It reflects a loud section of Oregon, but not the people of Oregon. So you need to start reading the bills. You need to get involved, and you got to take a risk. You're going to have to stand up for what you believe in, because people like James and Ben and others can't do it for everybody. You're relying on other people. You got all 13 senators who are risking their entire political career because they think there's a measure which you don't agree with. And they're right. And they're willing to stand up and do that. So what are you willing to do? It's time you can't just bitch and gripe about the city councils or your school boards. You have to get involved. That's my advice, because you can change. You can bring Oregon back to its glory. You really can. And she deserves it, because she's an amazing place. And you guys still got time. You're young. I know. That's why I had to move. I don't have time for that anymore. I got to start living my life in a place where I can find all the things I just talked about, and I do. But you need to find them. You need to reestablish them there. All right. We'll talk to you tomorrow night for freestyle. Good night.